Why do men climb mountains? It's quite a simple but also very revealing question because think about it, like 90% of mountain climbers are men. And when you go on about climbing a mountain, um, you have beautiful views, right? But let's say you're Mount Everest or something like that, and you see someone just died and he's like a marking spot. Like it's actually quite risky. So um, why do men climb mountains? Yeah, because masculinity is really strange. It builds skyscrapers and then starts wars, invents the light bulb, then dies in a basement all alone. Is the first on the moon, but the last to ask for help. And in almost every society, men are the most admired and the most forgotten as well, the ones who soar the highest and the ones who fall. And when they fall all the way through. And what you'll often hear in Red Pill or the cliche masculine self-improvement bubble is this narrative, femininity is instinct, it's emotional and subconscious, whereas masculinity is this rational counterbalance, grounded and stable. But I believe that both of these forces are deeply subconscious and instinctive, and neither is rational. But I'll get into that later. So, in today's video, I believe you'll get an insight into masculinity that combines ideas from biology, philosophy, psychology, sociology, and whatever into a beautiful single idea. But let's start from the beginning. Let's start with the data because um, let's look at data. Yeah, statistically, men and women on average have the same IQ, hovering at around 100 points with a beautiful Gaussian distribution like this. But already looking at, well, can you focus, please? There you go. But already looking at the distribution, you can see that the um, men's curve is quite different from the women's chart. The standard deviation for men was 16.2, for women it was 13.2. So in short, men are the smartest and the dumbest members of society. This particular study also mentioned how IQ is mostly genetic and you can only train for better performance in an IQ test, but technically doesn't increase your IQ, which is weird. I think this whole IQ obsession deserves a video of its own. But whether it's biological differences or social ones, let's look at other examples. You may have heard of the glass ceiling, which is mostly associated with women's careers. It describes a phenomenon where, because of their gender in their career, they are held back from advancing into certain levels like executives or senior leadership roles. Men constituted 71% of CEOs in America's 100 biggest companies and about two-thirds of senior management, which is a lot. All very interesting data that has sparked debate in social sciences and politics. But have you heard of the glass cellar? This term refers to another invisible barrier which keeps men in poorly paid and often hazardous jobs. In 2025, 87% of US garbage men, okay, let's say garbage collectors, were male, minors 85%, pest control 94, plumbers 97, truck drivers 95. And obviously, for a lot of these jobs, you need a certain level of physical strength. Like I imagine it's pretty much 100% in construction, or at least things like roofers that get really physical, up on the roof. But a lot of feminists even address this, but in my opinion, they simplify it um, into phrases like the patriarchy is eating itself up, or that it's the patriarchy's fault that the depression, loneliness, and suicide is so high among men. But we won't be jumping into conclusions, at least for now. Let's look at infant mortality. Baby boys aged 0 to 4 are 13 to 17% more likely to die, and birth defects and mutations are higher in boys as well. But let's stick with biology for a second. Have you ever thought about the biological purpose of males as a whole? Because after all, we can't give birth to another human being. One factor might be that our bodies could be altered for defense or strength instead of childbearing. But consider this: 99% of complex organisms like plants, fungi, animals have this two sex models, and some of the time they don't even do anything, like for bees, spiders, and octopus. So, uh, what advantage does a species have? Why do they seem to sacrifice so much just to have two sexes? The answer is shuffling cards, because sexual reproduction creates diverse offspring with unique combinations of genes, which increases the chance of some individuals having traits that are beneficial for survival and reproduction in a particular environment. And this fact is highly known and acknowledged by the scientific community. And together with the fact that, in general, women tend to be more hypergamous, meaning that having a having a partner of higher social status, it creates an interesting environment. So women tend to date up, but up changes and adapts constantly. And this is the main idea of the video. Masculinity, in a sense, is masculinity, in a sense, biologically, philosophically, and socially, is technically like evolution's engine, for lack of better word. And that is exactly why, for me personally, anything else other than it being a force of nature is simply extra attachment to masculinity. Um, what what we often see is strength being portrayed, or the pursuit of strength, which in itself I don't think is masculine. It's just that strength, physical and mental, or grit, are crucial because they are the power, the power to change, right? The power to change society. And that is exactly what's wrong with the modern narrative of masculinity, is that it leaves out all the freedoms of young men, telling them what to do, portraying things like status, money, and a calm, grounded, stoic mindset as goals, when in reality they should be tools for your purpose. Don't get me wrong, I'm the last guy to tell you, oh, money doesn't make you happier, or any other of um, the fox that couldn't reach the grapes arc. This Zen inner peace, find happiness within yourself. BS. It's a mere retreat from reality. That's also not masculinity. You go completely inward and you tell yourself that you contain yourself in this box of humility and detachment, but you're really just disappointed by what's outside the box. I think, especially as a young person, you don't need to be humble and have this quiet feeling of superiority, that you're above the others, that you are humble and you're so precious and whatnot, right? You need to be humbled, bold. You need to be bold. That's true humility through experience and not containment. And the same, I believe, applies to the mindset regarding women, and it goes both ways, because there's a classic toxic, like get laid so much, become a male pop narrative, but also the other side, like there's guys genuinely believing that finding a wife and having kids is their actual purpose in itself. um, in itself, that's good, that's great, but calling it your purpose could lead to some disappointment later in life, because you need to have something going for you, I believe. Because what all of these standards do is contain that flame, hold this immense transformative power. Don't get me wrong, it's great if you work out, make money, but if you can't see past those things and truly do what you want, you'll be stuck in this self optimizer loop. And this is what I truly despise in how masculinity is viewed. Either through this woke lens where it's a toxic relic of the past just to serve the patriarchy, and on the other side, the hustler lens, a rational force. We have everything laid out, how to behave, what to achieve, what to do, which is psychological castration of a man, basically. All attempts to contain masculinity in a form or deny it entirely have have had disastrous effects. The male loneliness epidemic, the rise of incels, and a rapid decline in testosterone, the latter of which is definitely linked more with health and environmental issues, with both of these factors are still heavily influenced by society, which leads us to the final question. Masculinity is highly individual, different for every man on this planet. But how should we approach masculinity, this raw strength, as a society? Do we contain it and fall into depression? Or do we deny it and fall into chaos? Or do we let it run free, enjoying its transformative power, but also suffer from its destructive spirit, to be honest? Do we need to have lost and lonely men for them to forge the path and pioneer? Or should we guide them in a direction that could nudge them towards something greater? Um, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. What do you think? With that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you a great Men's Mental Health Month. Thank you very much.